Scott, can you hear me? Just right, yes. Okay, cool. I now no, I never felt unsafe surrounded by the sharks. They're very tolerant of our presence. Have I been aware? Yes. If I go in the water, especially with like bigger species like bull sharks or tiger sharks, do I need to keep a little bit more awareness? Absolutely. But no, I never felt unsafe. They're I would say sharks, in a certain way, I found them fairly predictable. They're actually much easier to predict than the behavior, for example, of dolphins, who have more like of a brain capability. I actually don't use the word aggressive for sharks. I would say intense. So, are they intense a certain time than others? Absolutely. For example, when a hurricane comes, um, there is a intensity that goes up into their behavior, and most likely is they feel the changes in pressure and they go into a higher provisioning mode. But if you think about what we do when a hurricane comes, we rush to the food store and fill up the trolley. I do feel that they feel the barometric pressure changing, dropping, and obviously they have the capability of understanding what's going on, and so they go into more provisioning mode. And I would say it's because they know they might not be able to feed for a while. Yes, they're definitely easier than predict than people. I actually say that sharks don't have one mean bone in their body. I know they don't have bones, but they're actually very, very honest creatures. It they're just so direct. They're not conniving. They don't have second thoughts. They're not trying to. They're not even capable of hunting, like let's say a dolphin or a killer whale can. So it's not that they don't have capability of strategizing. The scent is coming this way. I'm going that way because this is what nature told me to do, and that's all I have to do. And so, in a certain way, they're a very direct animal. It might be one of the reasons I'm actually very comfortable with them because, as a person, I tend to be fairly direct. And with them, I don't have to second guess the behavior. They want to be pet, they don't want to be pet. They don't want to be pet, they don't want to be pet. It's not like, oh, I wonder if it is or something. It's just a very easy behavior. I used to joke that if guys were like sharks, it would have been much easier. The depending on the strength of the storm. So, like the biggest storm, like Matthew and Dorian, it could be up to 4 to 5 days prior to. So, if it's a smaller storm, could be maybe just 24 hours. So they actually even, I would say, feel the difference in the intensity of the storm that is coming, and that changes the approach to it. But I come up with a rule: if there's a hurricane or a major storm, I'm not talking about anything below hurricane force one is inconsequential here, but anything above that is, I have a rule that there's no longer shark dives, shark interacted dives up to 4 to 5 days prior to the storm. One, because we also have to prepare, but really just because their behavior is a little bit too high. And so it's about that. If you have, like, let's say a winter storm, so you go out there and it's like 5, 6 foot seas and it's been raining, it's a little bit hazy, then you'll find that a little bit more, I call them zippy. They tend to be a little bit faster swimming around. They tend to keep a little bit more of a distance. They seems to almost be like us, like a nice, sunny, clear day where they're not surging back and forth or relaxes them. The worse the conditions, the more agitated and, like I said, intense they become. You see, someone else came in. Who is it? Do you have a storm box that if a storm enter that box, you cancel dives? Yes. So we have obviously parameters. We what I like to do is I look at the weather forecast. Hi, Michael. Good to see you too. Thank you for being in. So I look at the forecast, but then at the end of the day, I take the boat out and uh, measure the weather with the boat, because a certain wind intensity for a certain direction can create a certain wave, maybe like a chop wave, and then from a different direction, the same intensity might create more of a rolling wave, and that also changes how the situation is down on the bottom, how the surge moves. So preferably, I like to go out and do a call based on the actual circumstances. But let's say anything above 6 foot seas, 20 miles per hour, 17 to 20 miles per hour, that comes straight into the south side of the island is cause for cancellations. And then factors, for example, like if the visibility drops. So during a shark dive, for example, if I have a lineup of people, the rule is we need to be able to see from one end to the other, and everybody needs to be able to see the hand signals between the feeder, the videographer, the shark handler, and the safety divers. So everything is within that visibility. If I have a line of people, and let's say it was a stormy day and the sand in the Bahamas is really white, and I can't see at the end of the line correctly, then the dive is called. I gave Scott. I gave a couple of presentations yesterday, and one was about shark and shark safety diving. And one of the things that I was trying to explain is that for me is important when we do these activities. We need to have three things in mind. We need to have the safety of the people that are on a shark dive in mind. Remember, those are technically our weakest link, right? Could be your diver that dive once a year. Maybe they just recently became certified, or maybe they've never been in certain conditions. But you also need to guarantee the safety of the staff that is working with the sharks and give them the appropriate tools to be able to work with that correctly. And that means also location. And then the third one is the safety of the sharks themselves. So you need to have, for me, in my opinion, all three of them to have a successful then shark interactive dive. Because if one of the three is missing or is failing, then all three end up paying for it. And I don't mean to, just, I'm not negative. I've done cage shark diving, but sometimes if we've seen, the cage, the sharks ends up in the cage, and I actually seen behind the scene footage where they're feeding from the cage, and obviously that attracts into the cage the shark. So now the person in the cage is safe, the person on the boat is safe, but then the sharks ends up being damaged, and I think that requires a different procedures in order to make the shark dive work. For each species of sharks also, I'm a very firm believer, one size does not fit all. So you will never see me doing anything in the caliber that I do with the group of Caribbean reef sharks with any other species anywhere in the world and in the ocean. I may go somewhere else and help people maybe set up a dive with the Caribbean reef sharks, a similar shark species, or similar conditions. Oh, Chantel, thank you. I know it's really late. My goodness, I love you. But you will never see me saying, "Oh, I'm going to try to do this with a bigger species." It's also not about ticking a box. It's like, "Oh, I'm done it with Caribbean reef sharks. Now I need to do it with a bigger shark." It's like, no, the relationship I have is with a group of Caribbean reef sharks right here. Oh, great support system. I have Michael Menduno and Chantel Newman. Do you have any other questions, Scott, or anyone else? Sorry. Itchy diving year. So, Michael is asking, what other sharks do I work with? I have worked with bull sharks, both in Mexico and in Fiji, with gray reef, black tips, white tip, not the oceanic white tip, just the little reef white tip. I work with tiger sharks, lemon sharks, nurse sharks, in different capacities. So wherever I go, I follow the rules and regulations of that operator or how the dive has been set up, and I adapt to their work. And oh yes, also done some free diving and some work with blue sharks and makos. So those are the kind of like the different species that I work with. Yes. I like to go and experience different dives with different species, with different handlers, with different people, and gather their point of view, their procedures. I always recommend my students, and that's for everything, for technical diving, for cave diving, for any kind of diving. And sometimes it's good to also experience the good and sometimes the bad and the ugly and say, oh, wow, okay, I've seen this. I'm definitely not going to do this. This didn't look too good. So that's how I built then the shark dive here. I collected all this information. So this works really well. I didn't like what I saw there, or I would not put the customers like this, and then build upon those different experiences. There's quite a lot of good people out there. Which species do I find that acclimate to my presence the easiest? Well, that's a very good question. I think it has to do a little bit with the, let's say I don't know what word to use, the predatory attitude of a shark. A nurse shark feeds on mollusks and crustaceans, so is obviously very intimidated by a creature that is, even if I'm only 5'5", but with a tank and bubbles and making bubbles, and so it might find harder to kind of like wanted to be approached. But then if I go in the water, for example, with a tiger shark who actually has a certain physical presence, is less intimidated, so it's actually easier to acclimate to the diver's presence. So that dictates a lot. Some sharks are tentative by nature. For example, the great hammerheads are some of the most tentative sharks that I actually experience. And then, for example, the oceanic whitetip is one of the least tentative. And it's dictated by what the oceanic whitetip is, which is a pelagic shark. So it lives out in the open oceans, eats few and far between, sees very little moving around. And when something moves and something happens, they are dictated by nature to investigate and rush over there and have a look. So obviously they're become a little bit more boisterous than, for example, a nurse shark. So it has to do with, I think, with the species. And like I said, the predatory, I really don't like to use that word, but it's basically their nature and what they're designated to do in the ocean by nature that also dictates how fast they'll go, I'm going to investigate that or not. To be honest with you, I actually was, many years back, I was in South Africa with Mike Rutson, and he was one of the first one that initiated free diving with the great whites in South Africa, which is not really one of the most comfortable and easiest environment. And he showed me like quite a lot of footage of the BBC. They were trying to have a below footage. We're so used to see the shark breaching, but they wanted to have a camera point of view shooting at the shark going for the surfboard, for example. And the amount of footage of the shark going and actually aborting the surfboard at the last minute, and how many hours this videographer had to stay down there to be able to get the one where it actually hit the surfboard, which I introduce here because of the personality of sharks. Everybody thinks, great whites, but they're also very cautious, and they can actually determine to a close range that is not a prey. And it brings it to a totally different subject, which is the subject we're so used to see the shark breaching and biting this surfboard or cookie or these fake lures that we put in. And nobody takes the time to actually show how many shots, how many times it takes for a great white to go for that decision. So no, yes, technically yes. So sharks in South Africa have been enticed to breach by towing either a fake seal. When I was first there, it was cut out of like big foam, or now they create like a proper round seal. They, tow it behind the line, and in this case, they just put in like a little board that would look like a seal, and so they were trying to get the shark to hit that. And like I said, the shark will arrive and change their mind, showing us how basically perceptive they are, showing us that they're not just going out there and biting everything that moves and not every surfboard that moves. But it was, yes, it was to show a shark swimming and then making that decision. I'm going to go for that. And it took quite a long time. Sure, they're smarter than BBC. Yes, they are. They're very selective. They're extremely selective. So Michael has asked, no, my home sharks, I remove hooks from Caribbean reef sharks. I never remove from tigers. And to be honest with you, Michael, I know how hard it is to remove a hook from a Caribbean reef shark. I would not want to try with a tiger because their skin is so thick and the little barb of the hooks remains stuck. Some hooks it takes me dive after dive after dive to remove. So it is, plus, a tiger shark that will come towards me here in the Bahamas will be about this wide, and a mouth open would be from my head almost to my umbilical point. So it would be a little bit too big to attempt anything. So we have big girls at Tiger Beach. So, but no, and we actually removed hooks from nurse sharks. So, and some, it's a little bit of work, and some are really funny. Like, remember one of the first ones that Kevin was on a dive with me. He grabbed the nurse shark by the pectoral fin, and the nurse shark just kind of like froze in place. And he had this giant hook through the nose. And I was sitting there wiggling, expecting the shark to swim away. And she actually sat there to her finally got the entire hook out of her nose, just dangling from a pectoral fin. So basically, it was holding her like you will hold a baby. It's like, oh, baby. And I was working on the hook, and we were able to remove. So Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks are so far the ones I removed hooks from. Do they let me turn them over for hook removal? No, not really. There was that pictures where the shark turned on itself, but I don't really put them into a flip position. I just either go on the fly, literally, or I put them to sleep, and first, kind of like as they sit in the air, I analyze the hook and then I try to move it. If you go on YouTube and you just plug in my first name, last name, so Cristina Zenato YouTube, there's quite a lot of the videos of the different hook removals. And a lot of them are really fast action. You'll see me just, then I turn around, you see my tank, and next thing you know, I turn around and have a hook in my hand. But you'll see the shark coming back and allow me to keep trying, which to me, that is the fascinating part. This is an animal, no human, most likely, will sit there if something hurts. We as humans are a little bit trained, right? If I go to the dentist and I feel a little bit of fastidious as it's drilling, I may sit there going, okay, it's going to get better. But in general, we are trained, it hurts, move away, reduce. Oops, what happened? Oh, it hurts, move away, remove yourself from the pain. Right? That's just why you learn how not to leave the hand on the stove. But the shark basically comes in allows me to wiggle the hook. They sit there for sometimes even 10-15 seconds, and then they swim away and then come back and let me try again, and swim away and then come back and let me try again. And that is a fascinating part, that despite the pain, they naturally swim away because that's what nature tells them to do, but they come back. And some of them seems to pause. They almost like go down with the tail in the sand and almost pause, like, yeah, you can do this, come on, try. So it's that for me. I never stop being fascinated by the fact that they let me try so many times. I have sharks that they make me try like 20-30 times in one dive. Yeah, they're and you know what? There's just so much that we don't know about sharks. Every day I turn around, I'm on Twitter following all these scientists, the science study all these different kind of sharks, and all of a sudden there's a new species of sharks that have found something else about a shark. They there is so much that we don't understand and appreciate about them, and that my fear is that we may lose them before we actually are capable of doing that. I think they do know that they actually, I am trying to help them. You see, the other funny part is when I start removing hooks from my sharks, I have sharks that I've never seen before showing up on the dive with a hook. And I actually have one male specifically. His name is a Blackspot. He has similar to Foggy Eye, has like a black eye. We call him Blackspot in, tribute to the pirates. But he he lives more or less on the reef, never comes on the interactive dive unless he has a hook. When he has a hook, comes in, I remove the hook. Once I remove the hook, I don't see him. He'll be on the other dives, on the other reef dives. The moment he has a hook, he comes back. So when I see Black Spot, I'm like, where's the hook? I'm like, oh, I know, you have a hook because you're back. I'm the shark doctor. Yeah, the shark dentist. But yeah, they do have, and I think this is one of the things I love about being here, that I'm still here, is I have been able to do something that not many, I mean, there are a few out there, but I'm in the water with them almost every day. And I can observe this over and over again. And there's all this data and these behaviors and this dive site fidelity that allows me to really create such a connections and a relationship and observe all these little quirks that they have. I had people ask, saying, "So, why don't you go somewhere else and to start working with other sharks?" And it, to me, will be as a similar someone saying, "Well, why don't you just leave your 3 dogs at the Humane Society? When you move somewhere else, just adopt 3 more." It's that is a kind of relationship I have with the sharks. Now, the sharks don't have that kind of relationship with me. They're sharks, but that's how I feel about them. And when I go down there, I look specifically for each and every one of them. They don't want me on Shark Week because I'm like the sharks. I'm a little bit too direct, and I won't do some of that stuff on camera. I don't know if they don't want me. The fact is, I will not say or do things for the sake of the camera. And so, in a certain way, I do not create drama. If somebody can say, "So we want to film you, and you need to say this," and it's just kind of like, well, no, because it doesn't happen. Because we work with the sharks like this, because the real sharks are like this. And so, in a certain way, by not doing some of the more agitated, sequences, I guess I'm not interested enough. That's one of my feelings. The other one, I don't know. We've been, but for me is, if you want to come and film me, these are my parameters. I honestly will forego your money if you ask me to forego my standards. Because at the end of the day, when the lights turn off, when the show is over, when you get off stage, then I still have to deal with what it is that I actually want to send out as a message to people and what I want to do for the sharks. Thank you, Michael. So hopefully I will host in a different kind of shark program. That might not be Shark Week. Correct. So with Shark Week, you never know how it will be edited. So I have very major concerns onto how they can cut it and make it look. All you need is the sharks to splash on the surface to put it into a certain behavior and then give it the wrong information. For example, one of the things, I don't know, sounds weird, but like I had student, people was like, oh, we want you to record with a GoPro or with a camera. With the GoPro, if a shark hits the GoPro, even with his body, it makes a very, very screechy sound, like almost like if the shark was biting it. And so I try not to do that and not to record a sound that then is used incorrectly, because it's just the body brushing against the housing of the camera. Is nothing that the shark is really doing. It's just enhanced by the water. See. Sure, Michael. I mean, you know where to find me, right? Do you have all my information? Good. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate your support. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chantel, although I think she has to have gone to bed. Definitely. And they're changing time. Well, they're changing time tonight, so she has 1 extra hour. But it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, in the UK right now. Where are you, Michael? Oh, okay. So we're on the same time zone. Scott, where are you writing from? Are you still here, Scott? Where are you hailing from? Palm Springs, California, Palm Beach, Florida. Ha! There you go. Oh, sorry, you're in Palm Springs, California. For whatever reason, I thought you were in Palm Beach, Michael. So you're even 3 hours behind. Scott, you're an island hopper away. You can literally swim across and come to West End. So that we're supposed to well, we're already open, but we're supposed to drop the required 14-day quarantine once you land on the island on November 1st. So you're still going to be required to have a negative COVID test up to 7 days or 5 days. Don't quote me, look at your embassy, but 5 to 7 days prior to leaving, so the date of your departure. But once you land and once you arrive, you will not be required to have a 14-day quarantine. So once they drop that, hopefully we'll have some flights resuming and hopefully few people coming in. Well, that's good. I mean, Bimini, Nassau, Cat Key. So you never done Tiger Beach? Not yet. All right, maybe you'll do a Tiger Beach with, local operator, land-based, and then drive down here and we go out with the Caribbean Reef Sharks. All right. Yes, Michael. I mean, I'm very reachable. You know that. Thank you for actually joining and for sitting here all this time. I really appreciate. Bye bye, Michael. I see someone else came in.
You go.
Thank you, Scott. Enjoy the rest of your show as well. I have one more session tomorrow and I'll be around the booth on and off. Have a good evening.